So in the early 2000s, I feel like they were just grabbing two different ideas that they put into a bowl, written on little pieces of paper, and they were making games from them. I mean, this led to a lot of really fun, interesting, weird, and obscure games in the early 2000s. I mean, do you guys remember MLB Slugfest? I mean, this was pretty much a normal baseball game, but you were able to turn into a minotaur, a ninja, fight each other. I mean, it was really odd, but it was extremely fun. And we also had games like WWE Crush Hour, which was pretty much a demolition derby sort of game, but instead of just being like a normal character, you got to be your favorite WWE superstar. Well, one of my favorite game series that actually spawned from this weird time was best described as Fight Club meeting hip hop. Now, of course, I'm talking about the Def Jam games. Now, anybody that's not familiar with this series, you're pretty much just in a wrestling game, but you get to be your favorite hip hop artist. So instead of being The Rock, you can be Ludacris. Instead of being Stone Cold Steve Austin, you can be Method Man. Now, Def Jam Vendetta is the beginning of this series, and if any of you are familiar with Aki Corporation, they were pretty popular in the late 90s and the early 2000s for a lot of wrestling games. I mean, they had games like WCW versus the World and 1999's WWF WrestleMania 2000. They had a lot of other games that they made underneath their belt, with a couple of these titles only being released in Japan, but wrestling games were pretty much their bread and butter. So while these games were developed by Aki Corporation, they were actually published by Electronic Arts, but they were underneath the EA Sports big umbrella. And if you guys are familiar with that umbrella, it was pretty much the ones that were responsible for the street sport games. Def Jam Vendetta was actually EA's first attempt back at making wrestling games since its first attempt, which was WCW's Backstage Assault, and I believe that was in the year 2000. So Def Jam Vendetta was more of an arcadey feel than like a simulation. They just kind of wanted you to have fun and not really take it too serious. So there's a little bit of button mashing elements added into it. It plays very similarly to WWF's No Mercy. You were able to win by pinning, by submitting, or just straight up knocking your opponents out. So I would say one of the most memorable parts of this game is having that blazon mode. It was pretty much like a momentum meter, a power gauge in a sense, that you would build up slowly after attacking your opponent a bunch of times and stuff. You would activate blazon mode and you would hit them with a special move. It was pretty much your finisher move in the WWE games, and you would pretty much just do something crazy and just break your opponent's neck in 19 different places. Def Jam Vendetta was actually received pretty well amongst everybody. I mean, it got very mid to high 8s to low 9s. I mean, it was pretty much just like a breath of fresh air on the fighting genre. It had great music, super fun. I mean, that's really all you can ask for, especially in the early 2000s. That's really all you needed. You didn't need crazy graphics. Well, of course, with a great game, you have to eventually get a sequel, and that's exactly what happened in 2004 with Def Jam Fight for New York. This game was also made by Aki Corporation, and it was released for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and the Xbox. There was also a PSP version, maybe some of you guys are familiar with that. It's actually Def Jam Fight for New York, The Takeover, and that was actually released 2 years later after this game. So the main difference with Fight for New York compared to Vendetta is that this one is just really built on the foundation of what that first game was. So it had all those same elements to it, but instead they added like interactive environments, the crowds could get involved. They were just trying to get a little bit more depth to the arenas and stuff. And they also added a little bit more depth to the fighting styles. So while the first game was more of a wrestling game, this one had a couple different fighting styles like street fighting, kickboxing, martial arts, wrestling, and submissions. So like in the first game, you had stats to your characters, especially if you played the like career mode. You would pretty much get cash and you would upgrade your characters as you see fit. Fighters were able to have different charisma by a combination of the clothes that they were wearing, the tattoos they had, and even the jewelry they were wearing. Pretty much the more expensive, the better. So a fighter with a good set of clothes, bunch of tattoos and jewelry, their momentum meter would fill up a lot easier and a lot faster compared to someone that didn't. So while there are a bunch of different styles of fighting, I mean, you could really only submit your opponent or just knock the shit out of them again. The only real difference in fighting styles was Street Fighters could attack with like a strong punch, wrestlers could perform a super strong grapple, and kickboxers could perform a kick combo. So while there is a little bit of variety to the fighting styles, realistically the end goal was the same thing, but in order to get there, the journey would be a little bit different. So this game did have a story mode which went a little bit more in depth than the first game, which was really nice. But this game also lets you unlock clubs, and you would get different fighters unlocked. You'd also be able to wear the jewelry that they were wearing. It just gave you a little bit of something to work towards, which was really cool. So unlike Def Jam Vendetta's 46 playable characters, Def Jam Fight for New York actually had 69 different characters that you were able to play as. I mean, this had so many characters that you were able to play as. It was actually kind of ridiculous. The GameCube version of this game was pretty much the same thing, but it had like a little bit less music tracks, and you know, some of the hardware just wasn't as strong as a PlayStation 2, so you wouldn't get like the light blur effect that was on the characters in some arenas, and just some of the arenas would have like less character models and stuff, just to like pretty much handle its hardware at the time. Just like Def Jam Vendetta, this game was primarily focused on just being a fun arcade game, and you don't have to worry about technical fighting or anything like that. Just have fun, listen to some great music. I've actually never met anybody that has not liked the Def Jam games. I mean, if you like WWE games, it's pretty much the same thing, just different characters. Def Jam Fight for New York scored mid-8s to low 9s as well, and it really just added on to the first game, so it really didn't take anything away. If anything, it just added to it all. Of course, all good things have to come to an end. I think EA was going for the three-peat like the Chicago Bulls, and that is why they released Def Jam Icon in 2007 for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Now this game was the first one and the last one to not be developed by Aki Corporation. It was actually developed by EA Chicago, so Def Jam Icon is actually way less wrestling oriented than the previous two games, and this was pretty much because the executive producer stated that he did not feel that wrestling and hip hop went particularly well with each other, which is really funny because I feel like that's exactly what made the two first games so good. So Def Jam Icon had pretty similar gameplay to Fight Night Round 3. So it had a lot of up close brawling, blocking, parries. Also, just like in Round 3, this game didn't really have like a heads up display, so you were able to tell the damage on your opponent by how exhausted they were, if they had bruises, or if any of their clothes were ripping. The developers were aiming for the music and the environment to have a much larger factor in this game than the previous two. So there are a lot more environments like streets and subways, nightclubs, even the BET's 106 and Park stage is in Def Jam Icon. I would say the next two mechanics that I'm going to talk about are pretty much what either made the game really great to you or just really broke the game for you. So different events would occur to the beats of each song. So for example, a column of fire would shoot up from a gas station on every single bass hit, or hubcaps would spin and twinkle to the beat of each song. And to just add on top of that, if you were listening to the music of the artist that you were playing as, they would be much stronger. So by listening to the beat of the songs and then timing throws to them, the players were able to toss opponents into an environmental hazard just as they would go off, and the game would feature a turntable action where spinning the right analog stick would allow the character to manipulate the music, and it would just be like this crazy extra damage. I don't really know why they went with this idea, to be honest. I feel like it's just really strange. Like they could have just kept going with the entire formula that was working and just put a fresh coat of paint on top of it, and I think it would have been received a lot better. The shitty part is that this game is definitely like the best looking out of the three, and it just has like the least amount of personality. So Def Jam Icon actually featured only 29 characters, so a pretty big downgrade from the previous two games. Now I feel like it goes without really saying that Def Jam Icon really wasn't received very well. I mean, sure, some people were like, yeah, it's not a bad game, I'll give it like a solid 7 or 8. But I think that if you played the previous two games, it just felt off. I mean, unfortunately, like I said, this game looked the best. It just performed the best. But it sucked because it just had weak fighting. The mechanics were super inconsistent. It just had no more character to it. It had no more personality. All the charisma was just sucked out of this game, and it just didn't do it for me. It didn't do it for a lot of people. So some people do say that Def Jam Icon killed the Def Jam games, but I would say that it's probably a mix of that, and realistically I don't think a game like this could exist anymore. There's just too many hoops you'd have to jump through with logistics and legalities and stuff like that. So will we ever get a fourth game in this series? Probably not. I wouldn't hold my breath, but hey, anything is possible. So I guess only time will tell.